this time, I would like to bring to the podium Mrs. Dee Dee Tung. She will be our keynote speaker for the evening.
Greetings to the young men and women of the class of 2014, their families and friends, the administration, Board of Education, faculty, and staff. Wow, I can't even begin to tell you what an honor it is for me to speak at this ceremony and to see you all once more before you take this step that leads to your future. Many of you probably don't know me very well, so I would like to quickly share a bit of my history. I was born and raised here in this community. I grew up on a dairy farm outside McGraw in Solon, where I lived with my parents and 5 sisters. In the words of my stepfather, we didn't have a lot of money, but we sure had a lot of fun. And we did. McGraw was a great place to grow up. The older you get, the more you will realize how true that is. Are you guys listening to me over there? I feel like I'm talking to you guys, and I want to be talking to these special people over here. From kindergarten through 12th grade, my feet walked the same hallways and stairways as yours did. If you haven't already noticed this, look at the worn stone as you go up and down the stairs, and you will envision thousands of students rushing to class who have traveled up and down them through the years. And then suddenly you will realize that your feet played a part in wearing down those steps. If your feet made such an impression on that lifeless piece of stone, take a moment and just dream about the impression your life can make on the lives of others. Today is a day for reminiscing, but more importantly, it's a day for big dreams. I've always been a bit of a dreamer, and I think you probably have too. When I was about 12 years old, I remember lying in the hay meadow with the grass that was taller than me, chewing on a piece of Timothy grass, and gazing up at the puffy white clouds in the beautiful blue sky, and imagining what life would hold for me. I always thought that I'd leave this place and live in a big city like San Francisco, where my oldest sister had moved. However, by the time I graduated from college, I couldn't imagine living anywhere but here. The rolling hills, the fresh air, the night skies filled with stars, the peepers in the spring, fireflies and wild strawberries in the summer, horse rides in the fall, the glistening snow in the winter. No, I couldn't leave. This was where I wanted to someday raise my family, where I grew up, a place that was safe, and a school that even though it was small, I knew it would provide all that my children would one day need. So that's what I did. I married the love of my life, settled here. We raised 3 boys, and I worked here at this school for over 30 years. I tell you all this not because I think you should or shouldn't stay here. I tell you this because I want you to store the memories of your years here in a sacred place in your heart. Those years are a part of who you are. Think of your life as an open book. On the left side of the book are all the places your feet have taken you, and because of that, you have written many of its pages already. On the right side of the book are the pages you have left to fill. At the end of the last day that I worked here, my husband met me and we took a final walk around the hallways. It happened to be a snowy day, so we were the only 2 people in the building. It's kind of eerie when that happens. It was a trip down memory lane for sure. On this final journey around the school, cherished teachers' faces raced through my mind. Mrs. Gross, Mr. Bonamici, Miss Peak, Mrs. Bew, Mr. and Mrs. Keeney, Mr. Winfield, Mrs. Hammond, Mr. Howe. Those are only just a few. When we got to the middle school wing, I pointed out my 6th grade classroom and remembered that that was a good year for me. My teacher's name that year was Mrs. Covert. A little farther down the hallway was my 4th grade classroom. Memories of being on crutches. Any of you ever been on crutches in school? Not much fun. And another beloved teacher, Mrs. Morgan. At the music room, I told my husband about Miss Southerden and how supportive she always was of me. And eventually, we wound our way around to my kindergarten classroom, currently Mr. Schlick's room, the place where my years here began. So many wonderful memories of teachers, staff, and friends too, who helped to make me who I am today. And I know without a doubt that each one of you have teachers and others who have influenced you. You will never forget them. So please be sure to thank them so they know. Seniors, soon to be graduates, you need to know that you are one of a kind. Each page written in your book of life matters. You matter. Every step you take, every decision you make, every word that leaves your lips matters. Life is a precious gift that should not be squandered. Believe me when I say you are the heartbeat of the future. We always had the choice between doing something or nothing. A well-known motivational speaker, Andy Andrews, tells it something like this. Did you know that there once existed a single man who more than a century ago made one move that still dramatically affects how you live today? On July 2nd, 1863, in a small town called Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Have you ever heard of that, Gettysburg? 34-year-old Colonel Joshua Chamberlain, a former school teacher from Maine, had to make a decision to either do nothing and retreat or do something to make one last charge to hold off the Confederacy. With only 80 men remaining out of 1,000, no ammunition left, and only bayonets for weapons, he ordered his men to charge. And they managed to capture over 400 armed Confederates. Had Chamberlain not charged that day, the rebels would have won at Gettysburg. Had the rebels won, they would have moved on to shut off all inroads to Washington, D.C., and ultimately, they would have won the Civil War. Now, consider this. Most people think we would have been two countries in that case. But historians believe we would more likely have ended up being divided into 9 to 13 countries. Had that happened, when Hitler invaded Europe and Hirohito invaded the islands of the South Pacific, there would not have existed a United States of America to stop them. All of our lives are affected today because of one man's decision to do something rather than nothing. Now let me give you a couple of personal examples. My grandparents raised their family during the Great Depression. They were farmers. Life was hard. One day when my mom was little, there was a knock at the door. My grandma, her name was Alice All, and she was a young woman at that time, answered the door. A little boy in tattered clothes pleaded with my grandma to come to his house around the bend because his mother was very sick and needed her help. So she went, and what she found was not a sick woman, but a woman about to give birth. To give you an idea of how poor this family was, the floor of their shack was made of dirt. Alice, my grandmother, without hesitation, up her sleeves, delivered their baby, and tended to the family's needs. She made a difference to this family who had so very little. That little baby survived and grew up to be a man because this woman was not afraid to do something. Another quick example. My husband Ron's grandfather, James McBlain, immigrated to this country. During his career as an engineer, he worked for a company in Elmira, New York called Eclipse, which later became Bendix Corporation. You see, up until about that time, in order to start a car engine, the driver went to the front of the car and used a hand crank to turn the engine over to get it running. And no, I'm not old enough to remember that. I was hoping I could laugh. Although there were already a few early car starter designs actually being used by Cadillac and some other high-end cars, Jim had a better idea. He designed and patented the first car starter that utilized a throw-out gear, which later became known as the Bendix. That engaged into a flywheel gear to start the car. And you, if you want, go ahead and let me know if you need any help with it, any trouble with your car. I'll probably be able to finish up because I'm kind of related to this guy that did this. Okay. Although the design has gone through many revisions and modifications over the years, nearly every car engine in the world still starts basically the same way today. He made the choice to do something. Through the years, I've seen students walk these halls and leave here and do amazing things. To name a few, they have, get ready for this folks, because this is a long list. I'm going to go fast and you have to listen really hard, okay? They have become nurses, doctors, teachers, counselors, speech, occupational, physical therapists, electrical, mechanical, and chemical engineers, artists, salesmen, musicians, composers, opera singers, poets, plumbers, electricians, flight attendants, secretaries, maintenance workers, machine operators, truck drivers, accountants, bank managers, CEOs, veterinarians, environmentalists, food service workers, inventors, computer specialists, servicemen and women, elected officials, policemen, government officials, lawyers, judges, ministers, missionaries, firefighters, authors, scientists, business administrators, and yes, even principals. Where is that, Mr. DeMoyer sitting? And I am, there you go. I am old enough to remember that. Everything, truly. I've seen it all pass through these doors. Maybe one day, the President of the United States will be a McGraw graduate. Who knows? It could happen. You have within you the ability to change the world, and don't ever think that because you came from a small school that you can't do big things. I firmly believe that the intimacy of this place is an advantage, not a disadvantage. Will there be disappointments along the way? Rainy days, dark clouds, maybe even some thunderstorms? You betcha. What you need to remember is the raindrops that fall nourish the earth so that life can then flourish. Likewise, your soul, your rainy days will replenish your soul. You need to experience them so you can grow. If the road is bumpy, don't despair. You are on the road to success. Just hang in there 5 minutes longer, folks. You'll get there. Learn something from each tear or maybe bead of sweat that falls. Life's greatest lessons are usually the result of life's greatest trials. Seek others who will be positive influences on you. And this is hard, but steer clear from those who will do you harm. And at the same time, set the example of a humble and loving heart. As humans, we have the ability to make wise choices. Lead the way so others will want to follow your righteousness. Don't live in a box. Tear down the walls so you will experience the joy of meeting others who are different from you. Be generous with your time, talents, and money. Volunteer. Get involved in the community you live. You will be rewarded many times over. As I close, I want to leave this thought with you. Never give up on your dreams. Have the tenacity to see them through. That's not to say that your dreams won't evolve into new dreams. That, my dear friends, is okay. Don't be afraid to change your major if you need to. Remember that each step you take along the way counts. Jacob Riis said it this way: look at a stone cutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times, without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet, at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know that it was not the last blow that did it, but all that had gone before. Don't give up. Persevere. Keep hammering. Work hard so you will bloom wherever you decide to plant your feet. And always, when given the choice between doing something or nothing, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do, everybody, something! The next time I lay down on the hay meadow and look up at the sky, you can bet I'll still be dreaming. I'm sure I'll dream about all I've seen and done, but more importantly, all that God has left for me to do. And for the record, just because I am retired doesn't mean that I have stopped thinking and caring about this special place and the dreams of the people who are a part of it. Don't ever stop dreaming. Make a difference in this imperfect world that we live in. May the remaining chapters in your book of life be blessed with an abundance of happiness and a life well lived. Thank you all.